What's up, everybody? I'm Dreadful Gooz. I'm here at Murder the Mix Studios, and welcome to another installment of Step by Step, No Bullshit. Today, we're going to learn how to set up a Floyd Rose Tremolo system step by step using this fine specimen of a guitar. This is a BC Rich Junior V 7-string, and this thing is absolutely badass. All right, that's enough for the intro. Let's get to it. All right, as with all the guitars that my customers bring me, the first thing that we have to do is prep this guitar to be set up. First thing we want to do is clean the frets using some steel wool and a fret guard from Music Nomad. All right, so you're going to take your fret guard, place it on the fret, and with your very fine grade steel wool, you're going to apply pressure and clean all of the dirt and grime off of the fret. And we're going to repeat this process now for the remaining frets on the guitar. After a few frets, you may want to go ahead and change your piece of steel wool out, depending on how dirty the frets are. Now, real quick, when you get to the higher frets, you want to make sure that you put a microfiber type cloth over your pickups, specifically the neck pickup, because you do not want these steel wool shavings going inside of your pickups. All right, now that the frets are clean, let's clean the fretboard. We're going to clean the fretboard with steel wool as well. The reason why we need a fret guard on the frets is because on the frets, we're going to apply a good amount of pressure. Now on the fretboard, you are not going to apply very much pressure at all. You want to very lightly and only use as much pressure as you need to wipe off the gunk. Very lightly, you're going to go ahead and do this and clean off whatever dirt and grime is on the fretboard. Again, I cannot stress this enough. Very lightly, or you're going to have marks all over your fretboard. Now that the frets and the fretboard are clean, let's dust off the steel wool shavings and then hydrate this board. We're going to use some fretboard F1 oil by Music Nomad, and we're going to apply it like so. I personally like to apply it onto the fretboard directly. Some people like to put it in a cloth and then apply it from the cloth. However you want to do it, no way is better than the other. We'll take a very heavy and absorbent cloth and start rubbing in the oil into the fretboard. It's best, in my opinion, to fold up your heavy absorbent cloth, use one corner to apply the oil into the board, and then the other corner to wipe off the excess off the frets and fretboard. What we're going to do now is wipe off the excess, and we're going to leave it to dry because we're now going to start working on the rest of the body. All right, now let's spray down the body and take advantage of the fact that the strings are not on so we can clean into these areas. Again, some people will spray it onto the guitar, some people like to spray it in a rag. Do whatever you like. All right, now that the guitar is nice and clean, let's get to work on the Floyd. If you are using a Floyd Rose tremolo system and you do not use any tremolo stoppers or stabilizers, then you need to get yourself one of these bad boys. This is the Trem Block by a company called Shred Neck. Basically, the way it works is take your trem arm, dump the bar, take this guy and put it right underneath. And next thing you know, your Floyd is parallel to the body. This will allow you to keep the Floyd perfectly balanced at all times while restringing your guitar. If you do it correctly, when you lift this guy out of place, you should only have to make very small minor adjustments, or you may not have to make really any adjustments at all. Depending on how low the tremolo sits, you may sometimes have to put it this way in order to keep it straight and parallel to the body. But in this case, I believe we'll be okay if we put this guy like this. Also, don't worry about it scratching your finish because it is rubberized at the bottom. Now we're ready to put on some strings, but before we do that, we want to make sure that all of our fine tuners are leveled. And by that I mean you want them roughly all around the same height. For example, this one is too high, some of them might be too low, so you kind of want them roughly all in line with each other. And you want to set them at the midway point. If you're not sure where your midway point is, simply you can take one of them, push it all the way down, take the next one, push it all the way up, and then the one in the middle, you can find a sweet spot as to where that would be the middle point between the one that's all the way in and the one that's all the way out. That seems to be fair, so we're gonna adjust all of them based on this guy. Now the reason I was lifting the bar and adjusting them instead of just leaving it resting on the shred neck is because sometimes the shred neck will put some pressure on these screws right here, back here. And so when it does that, it will create an upward pressure and it won't allow you to adjust the fine tuner. So if you have your bar attached, just dump the bar a little bit, do what you gotta do, and then put it back on. All right, now we're gonna take a 3mm Allen wrench and we're gonna loosen these screws back here. When doing this, make sure to move the screw back far enough so that the string has a good amount of room to get in there nice and snug. You can actually look down into the insert block while doing this and see how far back the screw is traveling. Now we're ready to put on our strings. This guitar is going to be set up on A standard, so we're going to be using a 10 to 52 pack, but we are also going to be using a 64 gauge for the low A, and we're also going to be using a wound third for the third string. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take our string and cut the ball end off. Like so. Now that we've cut the ball end off, we're going to go ahead and insert the string into the same hole where the insert block is. Now you want to make sure to tighten it good, but do not over tighten it, because what will happen is these insert blocks, if they are not made out of titanium, they will expand and they will crack and they will be hard as hell to get out of there. In some cases, they may crack completely and then you can't tighten it good enough to hold your string, and your string will just pop out once you try to tune it. Again, because of the pressure of the upward pressure of the trem block, sometimes I will lift and just make sure that it's nice and snug in there. And we'll repeat this process for the rest of the strings. All right, all the strings are on, so let's go ahead and back the camera off a little bit and point our attention to the rest of the guitar. All right, real quick, we're gonna take all of our strings and push them off to the side. And we're gonna grab the thickest string and start with that first and start stringing this thing up. Oh, and real quick before we do that, we're gonna use a tool such as this to tighten the tuning pegs just to make sure that they are not loose, because that will impact your tuning stability as well. All right, so make sure that the holes on the headstock here on the tuners are aligned so that the string can literally just go straight through it without any, or as little friction, I guess I should say, as possible. We're gonna take the string, pull it all the way through, and then start to pull it back. Sorry if my shirt is pretty bright, you may not be able to see the string, but you basically wanna pull it back like so you have some slack. If you wanna watch in more detail how I string it here, I'll link the video where I did a Gibson setup right somewhere over here. I've been stringing guitars up like this for, I don't know, 15 years. Never had tuning stability issues on any of them, whether it be a Floyd Rose or a hardtail or a Fender style tremolo. It just works. There's no need to do all that extra work here, tying your strings. No point. And again, we're gonna repeat the process for all the strings. Cool, now all the strings are on. So what we wanna do is we wanna tune up our guitar and make sure we have a kind of like a reference as to where we're gonna go from here. So I wanna show you guys something. When I was tuning the guitar up to pitch, I noticed real quickly that the tremolo started to rise up and I was only able to get up to the 3rd string before the trem block actually slipped out from under the Floyd. What that means is that we need to go back into the back of the guitar and adjust the spring tension that is here. If your Floyd Rose, when you have it flat like this, if it is rising upwards, when you're tuning it, that means that there is not enough spring tension in the back. So we have to tighten these guys, and we'll do that now. Let's loosen the strings first. Cool, so they're pretty loose right now, and you'll see that the Floyd has now sunk back into the body, which is good. That's what we want. So we're gonna take a Phillips head screwdriver, and remember, like I said, we have to tighten this. So we're going to be, pushing the claw this way. Cool, now that we've made those adjustments, let's basically start from 0 again. Take the trem block, put it under, and let's start tuning this bad boy up. Now that we've removed the trem block, it's actually parallel to the body perfectly, but because it went back a little bit, these strings are going to be a bit sharp. So what we're going to do is, instead of trying to tune them, we don't want to do that, because if we detune them to make them go to the pitch that they should be, what's going to happen is the tremolo is going to sink. So instead, what we're going to do is, to counteract everything, remember it's a balance, we're going to go in the back of the guitar again and make the adjustment. So now we're going to loosen the claw just a little bit. All right, so we still have a lot of adjustments to do on this guitar. First thing we need to do is we need to make sure that the neck is straight. I've gone ahead and checked it, and in fact, it is not straight. It has a pretty nasty bow, so we've got to go ahead and tighten the truss rod and straighten that out. Once I'm done with that, and the neck is relatively straight, I'm going to take a feeler gauge at the 6th fret to be a little bit more precise and see what the relief is looking like on the neck. Afterwards, I'm going to go ahead and go to the bridge post and adjust the height both on the bass side of the guitar and on the treble side of the guitar. Once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and do the final step, which is one of the most important, is intonation. All right, so let's go ahead and take this truss rod cover off so we can get to the truss rod and adjust it. I'm going to need a little bit more range in order to move the Allen key properly. So I'm gonna have to loosen some strings. That's why I put my trem block back on. Remember, to the right is to tighten, and to the left is to loosen. All right, sorry if I was a little bit off camera there. Not sure if I was, but if I was, apologize for that. But I like to, when I'm doing the adjustment, I like to stare straight down the neck this way when I'm doing it, so that I can see. And again, remember, this is just we're getting it relatively straight. Before, I could clearly see it was bent like that. So now it looks pretty as straight as it can possibly get without over tightening the truss rod. So now that we have it relatively straight, we're going to tune it back up. And then we're going to take our feeler gauge and see if we need to either tighten it a little bit more or if we need to loosen it. All right, so the guitar is back, it's strung up, the bridge is parallel to the body, and that's a good thing. That's exactly what we want. The neck is as straight as I could get it without over tightening the truss rod, but it could be a little bit straighter. Now, we're not going to keep, again, like I said, we're not going to keep cranking away at the truss rod to make the neck straighter. What is happening is that there's a lot of tension here, and the string action height is actually very high, so it's creating some sort of upward tension that is possibly making the neck still have a little bit of a bow, or more of a bow than we want. So what we're going to do is, now we're going to adjust the action height, and this could be a little tricky, but what I like to do is I'll take a capo, put it at the 1st fret, like so, and make sure when you capo it that you're not putting the capo in the middle of the fret. You want the capo to be as close as possible to the actual fret so that it clears the fret evenly and clean. Next, we'll take a measuring gauge for string action height, such as this from Music Nomad, and we'll place it at the 12th fret. And yes, the action is pretty high. So we're gonna go ahead again and take our 3mm Allen key, or Allen wrench, whatever you wanna call it. And we are going to make an adjustment here at the bridge. Now, normally I like to do this in the playing position. So I just, bear with me if you can see. It'll be this bridge post right over here. So on the bass side, that seems a lot better. And now we need to go ahead and repeat this process for the other side. Yeah, it's really high on here as well. All right, so that's a good place to start from. We'll go ahead and remove the capo, and obviously we're gonna have to retune this guitar. I wanna take a look with my feeler gauge. I wanna see where we are in terms of relief, because now this will tell me if I need to tighten the neck more or loosen it. And again, this also, you wanna do it in the playing position. For this, you wanna put the capo back on. I like to do this in the playing position so as to not cause any upward tension on the neck. However, I will do it just for demonstration here, then I'll pull it off camera and properly do it the way I normally would. All right, guys, now that everything else is done, the last thing we need to do is intonate this bridge. So the first thing we need to do is plug one of our notes. So let's plug the low A. So now it's perfectly in tune as an open A string. What we're gonna do next is hit the open harmonic at the 12th fret. It should register the same as the open. And then when you fret it, so we're having an issue here. When I fret it on the 12th fret, what's happening is that it is going sharp. So what I need to do is take the saddle right here and unlock it from the saddle screw and push the saddle further back. That way, it'll allow me to have the guitar perfectly intonated, or the string, I should say, perfectly intonated across the neck. All right, so let's go ahead and take this saddle screw and move it back. I have this really cool intonation tool called the Red Bishop. It allows me to do the intonation on any Floyd Rose Equipped guitar really easily. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen it like I just did and use the intonation screw to pull the saddle back. Now I know it needs to go back pretty good, so now I think that is pretty good. We'll go ahead now, take the intonation screw off. All right, so disengage that. Now we're gonna put it in the playing position and tune it up. And real quick before I do that, that's basically all there is to it. Now, like I said, if it's too flat, you would move it this way, and if it's too sharp, you would move it this way. Now that I've done that on camera, let me go off camera and do that so that I can do it in the playing position, and then we should be done with this setup. Yo, so there you have it, man. This is the Junior V7 from BC Rich. This thing is mean and ready to kill. I'm going to spend some time off camera playing this guitar because it feels great now. And I will be making another video where I will be demoing the guitar properly and talking about all the specs and the pickups and all that good stuff. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and follow all my social media links down below. Peace.